Hello everyone. This video is going to be about how to interact with OpenStreetMap and then grab some of the data for use in different platforms like ArcGIS, Q, Grass, or others. Those who aren't aware, OpenStreetMap, pretty excellent worldwide resource. It's been built out communally, for many years now. That really is just kind of a communal growth of all data in the world, really. And there are some areas that you'll definitely see more than others. United States metropolitan areas versus a very rural area, maybe in the middle of Texas or in the middle of the Amazon. But it's a really great resource, kind of like the Wikipedia of mapping, where people over time have been building out layers that then get checked, confirmed, and remain on the site. So another time, hopefully I'll do a video about how you can add to this, because I think that is really good practice if you're ever working on any kind of project that involves you digitizing some data. It might be always worth checking back to OpenStreetMap, just seeing if it's there so you can add to the growing collection of data. But right now I'm really going to talk about how to get stuff off of OpenStreetMap. Right, so I'm looking at it right now, so you can understand and zoom in. It is really a fairly comprehensive. This is in Chicago right now. Has a number of different styles of layers: roads by type, buildings, land uses, streets, place marks, so on and so forth, that have gradually been updated by users over time. It takes a minute to get used to. I know some people don't necessarily like the layout of it. I now love it after having used it for a while. So if you don't use it or engage it as your base map in ArcGIS, I definitely recommend that you do that. But in terms of getting data out, there's a couple ways you can go about it. So the most basic way is you can just export directly here from the OpenStreetMap portal. So you go to OpenStreetMap and then go to Export. And you hit the export here. Oop, site's not reached. And that's the issue I've been having, so I'm glad that happened. But what I more wanted to show you is usually when you go to export, you should be able to have a little window here where you can actually kind of define your export window if you need something more custom. And then it'll export you all of the data within that area. If the site itself isn't working, where there are issues with cookies on your browser or it's down, it does have a really good collection of other resources here. Probably my favorite and the easiest way if you're working in cities is to do metro extracts. So if you click on metro extracts, you'll get to something that was put together by Mapzen, which is pretty cool. You can come in, search by the major cities or regions. They'll give you some potential extracts. You can click on it. It'll show you what's going to be extracted, and then it'll give you, a couple of options. And right now we're just doing very basic. We're not going into customization. But you have a couple of options. So if you want the coastlines, obviously, if you feel like you have any understanding of these data types, you can get it raw, but probably what you'll be working with are these two. Of the two, from a user friendliness perspective, probably this one is the easiest, because what this is going to do is give you a bunch of layers by the OpenStreetMap tag. So these include streets, places, land types, buildings. It takes a minute to get used to, but once you understand the way that they tag things, this is pretty easy. Whereas this will lump it all into lines, points, and polygons. So you click on it, it'll prep your download, so on and so forth. And then if you come into your ArcGIS or your Grass or Q or whatever you're using, in Arc right now, just to kind of further prove the point, I've got my OpenStreet base map behind the scenes. Hopefully it'll come up in just a second. Right, so you can see kind of a similar thing, within Arc. But if I go to what I just downloaded in my catalog, right, I can see that I have a bunch of options here. Right, I have the administrative boundaries that were in that extent, right? So that's likely going to be Chicago, but since they extended it out, you'll probably get some of the other neighboring cities. I have amenities, right? I can drag it in and just take a check at what those are. These are kind of major point-based layers, usually used for labeling, and they'll give you a sense of what type it is and what it's essentially named. Some of the more interesting ones too, you can drag in buildings, and fairly comprehensive and probably shouldn't have done that. Might take a minute, but a pretty well, or pretty comprehensive and fairly well updated sense of the buildings. Same thing. It's not going to have every attribute available, but it has enough, right? It has the real basics that you would need. An ID you can always link back to OpenStreetMap, and then the type and the name. And again, this is a publicly updated thing, so some of these might be a little bit off, but it's a really good way if you need to get some foundation of data in an area where you might not necessarily have it prepared by a city government or offered publicly by a city government. This is a good way to get some. House numbers is a good way that you can actually build address locators. Land usage is probably one of the coolest. You come in and they have a couple of basic land uses for areas where you don't really see buildings. And it's kind of neat. You got your type there, and one thing I've always found that's helpful by this is I can go to type and I can call out parking, for example, because that's always a very interesting thing you want to look at in cities, and I can actually get a pretty nice set of what parking lots would look like in a given metropolitan area. Now, it may not have all of them. Some of them might be slightly off, but usually it's a pretty good data set, and then whatever work you're doing, you can go and edit and update and add information if you need to. So, like I said, extracting from these portals, really, really helpful, can get you a lot of data in different areas. But just remember, a couple things. You're always good to give back if you're getting, right? So if you're utilizing these services, I don't just mean saying thank you to the people at OpenStreetMap or Mapzen to keep it going, but continue to post. Make sure you're helping grow OpenStreetMap as time goes on. And then just citing, so making sure whenever you're creating maps or analytics that have this data, just make sure you're sourcing that this came from OpenStreetMap through Mapzen. Thanks, everybody.